Back Live. Brian and Kyle return. We will hit such hard-hitting topics as, let's talk basketball first. I guess, Brian, you made the trip up to Chicago yesterday, basketball media day. And Kyle, with the women too as well, there seemed to be just a lack of Purdue talk on a big scope. And that isn't shocking considering, especially where the men are picked. But what'd you glean from media day?
Nothing really. I mean, this is just, it's all just kind of a rehash of everything we've been covering, everything we've been asking about, everything we've been writing about for the past 3-4 months. But what Big Ten Media Day is a chance for everyone to come in and ask all the same questions we've been asking since the spring. So yeah. it was sort of, from our perspective, not really a whole lot of new stuff. I think Purdue still really likes its freshmen. I still think Purdue is obviously counting on A.J. Hammons heavily and feels like he's in the best position of his career to handle that well. And, you know, I'm trying not to use the word carry Purdue, but it's pretty evident he's going to be the most important piece at both ends of the floor and the centerpiece of everything Purdue does at both ends of the floor. So Purdue is at the mercy of A.J. Hammons this year. I think that's pretty fair to say.
The story for the women in the Big Ten is the addition of 2 national
prominent teams.
Yes, programs. And
Men
Maryland.
Not so much.
Yeah, that doesn't really go for the.
Yeah. Well, Maryland's has been good, but yes.
Not recently, really.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
yeah, well, I mean, Maryland a Final Four participant last year, and picked to win the league this year, and Rutgers with Vivian Stringer and Hall of Fame career that she has had. So that's sort of the storyline. Those 2 programs coming in. Where does Purdue fit? Well, I think that they want to show the new kids on the block that it's not going to be as easy as what they might hope or anticipate it being coming into the Big Ten. But in the Big Ten, I think in women's basketball, the national profile needs to be raised. The way you do it is to have success in the NCAA tournament, and they have not had deep success in the NCAA tournament since Michigan State made it to the championship game, and how many years ago now was that? It's been a few, almost a decade, right? I mean, it's been a while, so maybe not quite that long. But Maryland helps, Rutgers could help, and maybe they'll raise the level and help the recruiting and help the Big Ten just overall.
Brian, was anybody especially good at the podium yesterday in terms of from Bo Ryan on down? Is anybody are these guys that you've covered for a long time? Is anybody anything really interesting? If not, well, we won't send you next year, so you better say something good. No.
Well, basically, what the first part is, what the podium time is just a chance for everybody to get up there for 8 minutes at a time and spew cliches.
Yeah. Did anybody not
Everybody's
spew?
Working incredibly hard.
Yeah.
In case you guys were wondering.
Yeah.
Best off season ever.
Best off season ever. But no, I didn't really take a whole lot from the podium stuff. Obviously, whoever's picked first is going to say we shouldn't be picked first, and whoever's picked second always talks up whoever's picked first. It's just really stupid. Tim Miles is usually awesome.
Yeah.
I was a little bit disappointed in him this year. He wasn't quite as funny. Perhaps it's
expectations are raised.
Well, he's also probably running out of material too. I mean, this is his 3rd Big Ten Media Day now. He's probably out of stuff. But
he wasn't tweeting at the podium.
No,
or
he
anything
did not tweet from the podium this year. Painter, I thought was, obviously pretty honest. That's the way he always is. Talking a lot about all the same stuff. Again, we've been talking about since the spring. Culture. Yada, yada, yada. We have to get Purdue guys in here. We really like our freshman, A.J. Hammons. He said there's no reason A.J. Hammons can't average 15 and 10.
And he said that 2 weeks ago when he was on our show. Is that?
I would agree. From a physical standpoint, I think we still have to see where Hammons is from from a mental standpoint. How ready he is to kind of handle that burden and be good every night. Maybe not be great every night, but be good enough to win with every night, to not be bad ever. If that makes any sense. I think he's got to be consistent this year just to give Purdue a chance.
Just playing both the big guys at the same time, real or not. I personally, I know all the knuckleheads want. I like the Twin Towers thing and playing them. To me, I like 5-4-3-2-1.
It was 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, whatever it was. At this exact same thing in Chicago, Painter was talking about moving Juwan Johnson out to the 4.
Yeah.
Big difference. Purdue has a zone now where they can hide Hammons defensively, whereas if you put Juwan Johnson out there in man-to-man, covering away from the basket, you're exposing him to some compromising positions defensively. I think Purdue can probably get away with it a little bit defensively. I think you're going to have some issues covering the corners against teams who can shoot. But you obviously have two guys who can cover a lot of space. You should be really good rebounding in that lineup. They seem to think they're fine offensively in that lineup because they're really convinced Hammons can pass well enough, shoot away from the basket a little bit, to play away from the basket, facing the basket a little bit. But I still think this is something you might see here and there a little bit. But if anybody's thinking this is the way they're going to start games and the way they're going to play 75% of their minutes, I just don't think that's going to happen.
It's pretty atypical these days for certainly college basketball and maybe basketball at any level.
Every time Purdue's tried to play big the last couple of years, and a lot of this has to do with the personnel involved, obviously. We're talking about Patrick Beatty, Donnie Hale, guys like that. Anytime they've tried to play with two traditional posts, meaning a true center and a more interior-oriented four-man as opposed to a kind of a matchup stretch four-man. Yeah, I still think Jay Simpson was more of a center than a four. They tried it against Michigan State for defensive matchups. It was a train wreck. When Purdue has played big the last couple of years, and again, I'll repeat, it has to do with personnel as much as anything. It hasn't gone well. So if Purdue's going to play with two traditional posts on the floor, one of them in a little bit of a new role, it's going to be real interesting to see how that works.
However, I would say Simpson and Hammons is big, but Haas and Hammons
that's
is
really
big.
Yeah,
I mean, this
that's
is as big as
atypically
you can have.
that is freak
just
show
about
big.
anywhere. Yeah, it's absolutely big.
Yeah.
John Octius, and I'm still never confident I'm pronouncing his name right.
Octius.
What?
Octius.
You got it.
Thank you. That's not your evaluation of what you've seen so far.
Well, I haven't seen him practice with Purdue yet. The one day I was out there, he was in a sweatshirt. I did get a chance to see him work out a little bit last week. Kind of reminds me a little bit, and I hesitate with all my being to make this comparison because I know what people are going to say, but he reminds me of Kelsey Barlow a little bit in the sense that he can kind of be that point guard. Not sure it's his ideal perfect position, but he's also got a lot of athleticism to him. He's not the athlete Barlow was. He's not as tall. He's not as long, but he's an athlete and he's versatile and he can play. He can play the one. He can play the two. He can play the three. Should be able to defend all those positions. Not sure he's an ideal shooter. I don't think he's going to go out of his way to shoot, which is a good thing. One thing Purdue's learned in the past couple of years, when you have guys who the strength of their game is not shooting, don't shoot.
But he can score.
I think John Octius' track record says he's not going to try to do a whole lot. He's not great at doing. I do think from a scoring perspective, he's a slasher. And I think that's a nice compliment to what Purdue has right now because they don't have, among their twos and their threes outside of Raphael Davis, you look at Kendall Stevens, Dakota Mathias, those guys aren't really dynamic off the dribble. I think it can help them to have kind of a real penetrator in their backcourt too, to just give them a little bit of balance. But it's going to be interesting to see what becomes of Octius. This is a situation that's virtually unprecedented, if it's precedented at all.
Yeah.
If precedented's a word. Painter keeps saying, I've asked him twice in the last 3 days about the point guard spot now. We've been asking him ever since the spring about this, and he answers it one way. And now he's like, I hesitate to even talk about it because he doesn't know what to make of Octius. But he does it with this kind of slide grin. And
it's a good problem.
Yeah, it's almost like he's winking when he's saying, I don't want to talk about it, but it seems like they're very enthusiastic about what John Octius can bring. Whether that's being their number one point guard, I still don't think they're going to have that one guy who plays 30 minutes a game. But he's really going to impact the point guard spot, but he's also going to make them more versatile and much better defensively, I think, on the perimeter than they ordinarily would have been.
I am so glad we have some questions because it seems like I thought we were dark here all day. But first, Russ says, solid beard, Kyle.
Thank you, sir.
And he appreciates that. Billy, I'll give this to Brian. Which freshman will have the most minutes per game at the end of the season?
Vince Edwards. If you ask me, I just get the sense, and it sounds like he's maybe hit a little bit of a wall in practice here the last couple of days based on what Painter said yesterday, but I think from day one they've looked at Vince Edwards as a guy who can really impact them. I don't mean instant stardom. I don't mean instant Wooden Award candidate like Robbie Hummel. But I think a lot of the stuff he brings from a substance and a versatility and a skill perspective to Purdue's front court, I think is something they're really looking forward to coaching.
Everything all right with Mathias in terms of health-wise? Everything's good?
As far as I know, he had the mono in the summer. I'm sure that set him back from a conditioning standpoint. I know he hurt his foot or his ankle or something like that the first day or two of practice, missed a couple days of practice. But as far as I know, he's fine.
Yeah.
Going to have to get caught up a little bit, but they're all freshmen. They're all getting caught up anyway. So
Yeah, that's a full-time process. Kyle, Whitney Bay's been interesting in terms of someone that really has a high ceiling, and she's healthy, yes.
Yes,
And-
pretty healthy, as healthy as she can be, it seems. And
Yeah,
she's
and-
had the ankle problem, more, or I guess the stress fracture issue more recently, and the knee problems
Yeah,
before that, but in relatively good health.
But a chance to really, if Purdue's going to be relevant on,
It's going to be through her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she wasn't on a preseason All Big Ten team, which wasn't surprising. She was the sixth player of the year last year, but I think it's still sort of a wait and see for others how good she can be. She has to stay out of foul trouble. She's going to start this year, play more minutes. But she can be the kind of player who takes over a game. I mean, she might average a double-double or pretty close to it this year, assuming she's healthy and plays the minutes she's capable of. I mean, she was the best player on the floor for Purdue, certainly, and maybe for any team during the NCAA tournament when it was here in Mackey Arena. Averaged 21 and 13 in those two games. Yeah, she's pretty good. Now, do they have enough around her? I think, the questions are, can they score from the perimeter? Can they defend from the perimeter? I think they'll play a little bit more zone this year than what they have the last couple of years because they're a little longer. But they're pretty good up front. Questions in the backcourt.
All right, Brian, we have just a couple minutes left in the show. Football recruiting, and I know you talked on Gold and Black Radio today. Kind of interesting because Purdue doesn't have any home games, but it is getting to a part of the season that they will be able to be on the road next Friday because of a bye week.
well, you can go on the road whenever you want. It's
Yeah,
just
but
a matter of-
but
yeah.
they're going to have more time to
Correct.
do that, I should say.
Correct.
Anything new and different or news about, in terms of this becoming an important time to hold guys, or is it now Purdue has to make that push to get the balance of its class handled?
I think this is an interesting week. We talked on the radio this morning about how Purdue has its class more than halfway filled up. They came that way into the fall. I think were maybe even a little bit ahead of the schedule they wanted to be on, which is certainly a good thing. But you also want to go into the season kind of track guys in the falls of their senior year. Also coach your team in its most recent form to get a better sense of your needs and whatnot. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys Purdue's been watching just kind of on its radar here the last couple weeks since the start of the high school football season. And what they'll end up doing next week is they'll get on the road, go see these guys at their schools, go collect as much film as possible, talk to as many people as possible, and as the former coach used to love to say, enhance the pool size. So you're going to see a bunch of guys. Purdue's going to get in on a bunch of guys now that it might not already be on, either at all or to a extensive extent. That's a great word, extensive extent.
That means a big extent.
Anyway, so it wouldn't surprise me at all here to see in the next couple of weeks a bunch of new offers go out, not only the 2015 guys, but also 2016s, 2017s, and so on.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that that's where college football recruiting is now, where you're even looking at sophomores, at least at this
Correct.
point. So that's
Football's turning into basketball.
yeah, and that I don't know if that's all a good thing. All right, well, one thing that was a good thing was the fact that Kyle and Brian stayed awake for the rest of the show. It was good, and so did hopefully all of you. I want to thank Calvin Williams also for joining us. Calvin was gracious enough to join us in segment 2. We will be taking a week off, not from work, unfortunately. It'll be a busy week next week getting our basketball preview magazine done and heading into that. That's right, that is due next week. And then we will be back 2 weeks from now, leading into the Purdue-Nebraska game. Again, Stacy will be off the show because she'll be making her way to Lincoln, Nebraska. But we'll be talking football and probably some men's basketball. We'll have and men's and women's basketball. We'll have already had the first round of exhibition games by that point in time. That's hard to believe in its own right. So we want to thank Chris Collar back in the back room and Gordon Jackson for all your help today. And obviously we want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, Hilton Garden Inn, John Basham and Basham Reynolds, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson. There, Kyle, you're almost on cue there. Appreciate that very much, and we'll look forward to joining you and hearing from you 2 weeks from today. Halloween, maybe with costumes?
Dress up, yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to give that some real thought.
Oh, I got some ideas.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, you got 2 weeks to figure it out, so we'll be ready for that. 2 weeks from now, Gold and Black Live. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.